Hi there, and welcome to this week's Ask Manish ahead of this weekend's Monaco Grand Prix. Before I kick off answering your questions, I just want to kick off this week's Ask Manish with my own tribute to the late Sir Jack Brabham. Sir Jack, what can you say about him? I never met him personally, but I know that he was such an inspiration and still is today, not only for Australian drivers but for other drivers as well. And I saw Daniel Ricciardo tweet earlier this week saying that Sir Jack Brabham was an inspiration for so many Australian drivers, and also Sir Sterling Moss as well described Sir Jack as a wonderful guy but also a terrific driver as well. So Sir Jack, you will always be remembered as a legend of Formula One, and I salute you for what you've achieved and what you also brought to Formula One, and my thoughts go out to his family and friends. So is Pastor Maldonado worthy of a drive in Formula One, or should he be dropped? I've said this on numerous occasions, Matt, and I'll say it again. I think the only reason Pastor Maldonado is at Lotus is because of money and the financial backing he brings. If it was down to pure racing talent, you'd be seeing someone like a Sergio Perez or a Nico Hulkenberg alongside Roman Grosjean at Lotus. Pastor, look, we know he's capable of delivering strong results. We saw what he can do, as we saw in Spain 2012, where he won brilliantly for Williams, but he's been too inconsistent for me. He's been causing so many unnecessary collisions. I mean, in Bahrain this year, what he did to Esteban Gutierrez was just absolutely ridiculous. And Pastor has to cut that out. If he continues to cause collisions like that, and if he continues to be inconsistent, then I think not only will Lotus drop him at the end of the season, but I also think he'll be without a Formula One driver as well. So, Pastor has to improve, and I hope he does improve. But the way things are going at the moment, you can't see it happening. And Pastor, like I said, the only reason he's in Formula One, at Lotus anyway, is because of the money and financial backing that it brings. So, for me, if he doesn't improve this season, I think he'll be dropped by the team, and I'd back the team if they did make that decision. I'll be honest with you, Paul. I think it's up to Renault and Ferrari to step up their game. You have to give Mercedes credit for how they've started this season. Also, Mercedes powered teams as well. Williams have done well. Force India have done brilliantly. And McLaren, okay, they've been struggling, but I can see them bouncing back this season. And I think, in terms of the engine regulations themselves, I think it's way too early to be even considering to think about making changes. And you've got to, for me personally, I think you've got to give the engine regulations. You've got to see how the engine's fare for the rest of the season, and then at the end of the season, then decide whether any change needs to be made to the engine regulations. But like I said, I think it's too early to be even thinking about making changes to the engine regulations. And if you are going to make any decisions, they should be at the end of the season. And I'll also say again that it's up to Renault and Ferrari to up their game. So my thoughts on Nico Rosberg signing a new deal at Mercedes. I think it's great news, not only for Nico, but for Mercedes as well. And knowing that Lewis will probably stay at the team next season, and knowing that Nico has signed a new deal, I think it's great for the team. You've got stability there, and stability is good for any sports team, not just for a Formula One team. So I think Nico signing a new deal is great, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the Nico and Lewis rivalry continue this season. And Nico, yes, he will be disappointed by the fact that Lewis has, I think he won that 3 or 4 race or 4 or 5 race on trot now. But Nico, he's given Lewis a fight this season. He's giving him a run for his money, and yeah, I think Nico can continue to do that. And like I said, I'm very much looking forward to seeing the rivalry between Nico and Lewis continue this season, and also into next season, 2015 as well. So my favourite memory of Ayrton Senna, well, I only started to get into Formula 1 in 1996, and by that time, Ayrton Senna, unfortunately, we lost him. And it was only until the early 2000s, and going into 2010, when I realised that how good a driver Ayrton Senna was, and watching videos and seeing what it was like as a driver. What in those videos, he really was such a remarkable driver, one of the most gifted and talented drivers ever to drive a Formula 1 car, and you could argue one of the best, if not the greatest driver in Formula 1. My favourite memory would be, I remember the opening lap of the European Grand Prix in 1993 at Donington. I think he went down to fifth during the early corners of that race, and then by the end of the first lap he was back to first and pulled off some unbelievable overtakes, some fantastic moves, and he also for a time during the race also drove on slick tyres during the damp conditions. So for him to do that was simply out of this world and so sensational. So for me, I think that would be my favourite memory of Ayrton Senna. And yeah, so thank you very much for sending in your questions for this week's Ask Manish, and I look forward to reading your future questions. You can keep sending in your questions back to @baggies20 on Twitter, and I very much look forward to reading them. But for now, cheerio.